It doesn't matter. It's all right.
Hello. It went live on my
Yeah, it's live. I just can't. For some reason, my oh, there it is. It took the chat a minute to figure out what it was doing. So, like, all my chat had a big red thing across the front of it. Like, I can't see it. Doesn't matter. Also, I like. We'll figure this out later, but for some reason, Restream, whatever I set the bit rate at, it goes above it, and then it says like excellent quality. It's set at 6,032, and then if it goes to 6,020, it says fair. I think it's getting to it, like, it's so weird. And if I set it at 5, it's excellent until it goes to 5, less than 20 bits ahead of time. It's so weird. Anyways. The computers are funny. Yeah.
That'll take some work.
Yeah. That's just on Restream's thing, I guess. But either way, it's working. We don't care. Hi, everybody, by the way, who's listening to us as we're getting set up. Like and subscribe. Share the show out. And Rob was just telling me that my footage got used on David Pakman's show earlier this week. I think that explains the little bump in crowd we had.
Yeah, I think it was either Monday or Tuesday. I'm pretty sure it was Monday, but I'm going to remember.
Right, and then I need to open up a couple. Did you watch the? Well, I'll save this for the air. I'm gonna save it.
I know what you're going to ask, and yes, I'm fully prepped.
Okay.
I didn't say what it is, but everybody can probably guess.
Right, I'm gonna take this down. Move the chat over here where I can look at it, and then I'm going to open up. Getting close, 2 minutes away, very exciting. have to say, well, again, I'll save it. I got 35 seconds. I can keep my mouth shut for 35 seconds. Damn it.
Can you though?
Ouch. Cold-blooded.
You can.
Chatty sees right through me. Can you keep your mouth shut, Hal? Can you? Can you really? Yeah. Owie. I will say I have a bunch of good. Here we are. All right, so let's go live. Let's do this while we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Friday Eye. Did my buttons work? We'll see. Hold on. Welcome to Friday Eye. There we go. I'm Hal Sparks. That's Rob Glenn from Root Design Chicago. And this is the part where we scare/bore the normies. Every Friday for the first hour, sometimes plus, we will jump in and introduce you to the power of the next wave in computing that is going to it's not going to take over the world. I'm sorry to he and I have been talking about this. I know it's going to disappoint a lot of people, but it is not going to destroy the world. It's actually going to be a net positive on a huge level. We're both very bullish. We're probably the two guys on the entire internet who unabashedly are big fans of the potential for AI and also realistic about what it means. And we got a lot to cover today because you don't. Our big thing is you don't have a choice. It's coming. So prepare, figure out how it can help you. Try to incorporate some of it early to kind of, shake off any reticence you might have about it. Play around with it because it's not going to destroy the world. It's not going to become Skynet or any of that shit. And there's a lot of positive coming out of it. But I think the big thing this week, and let's talk about this right away before I jump to the weird rabbit holes I get down with AI stuff, is of course Apple's big announcement on Monday as part of their WWDC, their Worldwide Developers Conference, which was I think done very well. I just want to hear your thoughts on it right away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so yes, I was talking about what I thought Apple would do with it, and they did pretty much that. My initial sort of reaction is on that, I think it was Monday or Tuesday's thing where they announced it on Monday, right?
Yep.
So they spent the entire first half of that, if not 2/3 of that, talking about everything, and they were mentioning machine learning going into each one of those things, Siri and
Apple Home,
calculator,
and iTunes, and like everything. Right?
Yes. So from a marketing standpoint, what they're trying to do is what we're talking about, which is to say, Gen AI is basically just an extension of machine learning, and so it's always been in Apple. This machine learning's always been there, and then my next sort of comment would be, of course, they called it Apple Intelligence because AI. That's what they would do.
Boom! That they were like slam dunk. Whoever came up with that.
Whoever the genius that did that is not a genius.
No,
come on.
they were just first ones to it, and they're kind of already queued up. Like I said. The reason Facebook's is called Llama is because large language model, and Llama is one of the few words that people use and pronounce and know that has 2 L's and an M in that order. And so really is what it is. Yeah. I
oftentimes mess up LLM and GPT.
Yes.
So they don't roll off the tongue.
No, they do not. ChatGPT is terrible as a brand thing. It worked because it was first, not because it's any good. Right.
Yeah. And then my last major comment is they were very strongly positioning the idea of their AI as being local cloud. They sort of compartmentalize it into three components. It
Yeah.
was local, which
Yeah.
they were heavy on,
Yep.
and then go to the cloud, which they call Apple Silicon, which is what they're trying to market as their controlled cloud.
Yep.
And then the chat or the open AI connection would be when we need to go there, and each step, according to them, you have full control over.
Right.
And in theory, full transparency. Whether or not that'll be true in the end and how all that works is still probably kind of working itself out. But they were very careful to try to start it off by saying, by illustrating mentally through marketing these components, these compartmentalized areas.
Right.
For obvious reasons. They're trying to talk about privacy and control of your data.
That's what I was getting to. So exactly. So they looked at why people aren't using AI in their own lives, and a lot of it is just especially with the stories, I think, of artists having their stuff scraped up to be turned into AI art, that drove a lot of people away from it because nobody wants their data harvested. We've all been taught to be very, more careful than we are, which almost nobody is, by the way. We just dump stuff onto social media and forget about it. But we pretend to give a shit about,
we get mad.
Privacy. Right,
like
when
after
it's used,
the fact, but we already did it.
Right, we signed the TOS, we uploaded stuff blindly. We're like, I thought, whatever. So the big thing they hit on over and over, and they use this icon everywhere, which is this Apple with a lock on the top of it, little Apple padlock. And what Rob is speaking, if I can nerd translate a little bit on behalf of the audience, is when he means local, means there's a chip on your phone in the generations that exist now and going forward. So it won't work on pre-M1 and the last highest silicon chip before that. I think is the final one. Every computer going forward, there will be enough computing power in it to do a localized version of an AI built into the device itself that is specific to it. So it doesn't have to, like ChatGPT, go to the web, scrape up some stuff, or to its large language model somewhere in its cloud and figure stuff out. It will happen on the physical device itself. That's the local part. And it does it, according to them, and it's going to come out in beta this fall, which is huge. It does it on the device itself, and then it does not store the information that it decides stuff from. So every time it does it, it forgets it and does it again, with the exception of the stuff you allow it to kind of constantly know. And it never shares it outside the device unless you give it permission. One of the clunky things that they brought up was, in some cases, it will need to use ChatGPT or one of the other models, so it will ask you, which seems like a huge pain in the ass. And I bet you by the time it comes out, there will be for anything in these categories, go ahead and check. If it asks for my credit card stuff or anything that involves buying me a plane ticket or whatever, ask me specifically or guide me through it in what bit by bit I will give it. Like I was talking to a person at a store and I only want to give the person standing there certain amounts of information from my credit card. If I had to speak, hey, our machine's down, so can you read your credit card out to me? Yes, I can, but not in front of the line of people who might just be going 7, 2, 4, 5, right? So that part was a little a little too clunky, I thought, in their description of.
It's going to
privacy.
Continue to be clunky, and here's why: because the way that they set it up with the machine learning algorithms that did all the things they say in photo and video and emojis and all these stuff that they said machine learning is doing this.
Right.
They're invoking to you that Apple, the experts in all of their stuff, they had these like brainiacs in Apple that did that, and they have Apple silicone, so their Apple device and their Apple silicone and their Apple algorithms, they want to say they're experts at that. So on device, you're doing something. Once you have to go to this third level, which is open AI, they're going to be telling everybody what they're not capable of doing. And that's a problem for them.
Right.
Because they're going to want to make sure everybody believes or thinks that
Right.
it's their
It's
expertise that they're bringing to their
Are you
phone.
saying it's performative clunkiness?
I I think that there might be some gray areas in what might actually be and what is going out and what they tell you is going out. That's what I'm getting at.
Gotcha. And Jerry, thank you for the super chat. I will thank you for the cup of coffee. And by the way, share the show out, guys. This is a broader topic, than the rest of the normal show. It's why I do the morning show, so we can talk a little deeper about some of the topics and things that will come up in the afternoon show and even on the news, because and especially this, because it's really crucial. So share it out on your socials right now. Let people know we're here, because it's amazing to me. I watch. I'm sure you see a bunch of these things too, like people who are now online AI experts, and that's what they do, and a lot of it is it's toilet paper YouTube. They're talking a lot about like the newest thing, and then the next day that newest thing is gone, right? That's the other thing about this technology is happening so goddamn fast that it's not. We're trying to, we're on here. We try to talk about, some of the updates and some of the things that are happening. And there's some nice things where you see it going in a right direction, which is what I like to draw attention to. It makes people feel a little bit better about it. But and there's a question from Linda that we'll get to in 1 second. But like these guys will do stuff like there's a new AI thing that does this, and then the next day it's in everything because it took them. These guys, nothing to create it. Okay, Linda was asking, Rob Glenn, so is it storing the instruction in memory on the chip itself, or is it stored like RAM, sorta? And I think that's that's the thing that is going to be very difficult to teach people what's happening. So there are these things called models, and the model is trained. Think of it like a file, like a piece of software, a file. So that file sits on your phone or can sit on your phone. And then the chip is basically just like a processor that takes information that you put in, it runs it through the model, and it gives you an answer back, right? So if that model lives on your phone, and the chip is your phone, and the information you give it to it that runs through it is on your phone, it can all work local. It can all work just on your phone without going anywhere else. Like a calculator doesn't have to have memory for the last, thing you like the last question you asked or the last, equation you put through it. It's just gone till next time. You hit AC and it's gone, right? Right. Yeah, it's because it's the action that happens, right? Yes. So now imagine that the model is a person and you're talking to a person. I've talked to a model before. Sure. Sorry, that came out weird. Imagine you're talking to a model. I'm with you. I'm following. So imagine that you're talking to a person. Sorry, I have to recreate it. Yes. This is going to be a clunky explanation, obviously. Sure. So when you talk to the person, you say you have a conversation with them. That person remembers what you talked about in the past. The local version of the model technically isn't storing the memory. Right. What's happening is that when you ask the question, it's giving the model your question today, along with a lot of other stuff that you previously said to it. So a lot of other stuff is stored on your phone, but the model doesn't store a lot of stuff. Right. And I don't know if that makes any sense. So you're technically not training the model on your phone. You're training like this third thing that lives in the middle. And that third thing goes along with your question to that model every time. So again, all of it's still local. And so the valuable thing on your phone will be all the information plus your little training thing that goes along with your question. Right, that gets to know you. Exactly. And so think of those as three different things now: the model, your training little thing, and all your information. So
Apple has all your information already.
Yep. Right.
The
That's the
text
other thing.
it's
People are
already
like, oh
there.
no. You're like, now it'll at least be
Right.
useful. Like if you're gonna use me, at least I should get something out of it. Right. Yeah.
Right. They own the training model, so
Right.
they own. I'm like out of the camera. So your stuff they already know. I'm
Right.
backward.
Sorry, we need to get next time I'm gonna get you a square breadth of the thing. I don't
And then it's the middle thing that would be your trained version of it. That is what gets traded or stays local, and maybe you give them access, maybe you don't. All
Right.
of that, Apple is going to have to try to figure out how to teach everybody that before they go in and use it, or else maybe they won't use it because they don't like it, or they'll just give everything up and get mad at them later when they realize what
right, which is what most people do. It's what they do with their Android and Google, and it's what they do with Microsoft Edge's Copilot and all this stuff. Fuck it, yes, here's my credit card number. This is my social security number. Here's the name of all my kids and their birth dates and my maternal grandmother's maiden name. Just all right, fine. Which so again, they've always counted on that shit.
So here's what I think they're going to do. That's kind of happening. So when they say this now there's level. So that's level 1. It's all local, and they say it's all locked up, and you got protection. Now you're like, we need it to do something that your phone can't do. So now you're going to go to the level 2, and level 2 is this what they call Apple Silicon. What I think is probably happening is because Apple has a partnership with OpenAI, they're probably running, like, let's call it like a more advanced version of the model, a bigger version of the model on Apple Silicon.
Right. Separate from the OpenAI servers and cloud on their own. Right. They built their own,
I'm guessing they're doing.
Isolated in that space at Apple, at Cupertino, or at their series of cloud storage places all over the earth, or whatever,
Right. So now they're going to say that's the special Apple version of OpenAI, and that's trained by Apple people who have talked to it, and it's trained by Apple engineers and all that stuff. And then they're going to be like, okay, now OpenAI they're like on the bleeding edge of all kinds of development. So they're going to be continuing to do stuff. And we're going to basically go ask them for information when we're on the bleeding edge. And you can choose to do that. That's kind of how I imagine this is going to go.
Yeah, I feel like, because there are a couple of programs right now, because I downloaded the ChatGPT for Mac thing, and I'm the only thing I have an issue with, and I wish was I don't know why this isn't a thing, is that there should be either because you can hit Command Spacebar and it starts listening, and then you go through the thing, and then you hit Command Spacebar and it stops. To me, we're all going to need an AI talkback button that's equivalent to, like, on on Star Trek when they would touch their their badge to start and stop. But instead of starting and stopping it, you would just hold it when you want to talk to it. It listens to nothing else except when you're talking. So if somebody starts saying shit, you just take your finger off and it stops, instead of you having to do a secondary action like whoops, or forget to. If you take your hand off that thing like a dead man switch, it stops listening to you. And that's where it can be a lot more intimate. It can actually function in that regard. Now, there's like and I won't say them because we'll trigger everybody's, but the Amazon's A and Apple's S and nobody uses this, but the Xbox Cortana, which does function, and they're phasing it out just in time for it to actually be useful. That is the dumbest, like Microsoft's dumbest singular AI move is they're removing Cortana from the Xbox thing right as like, oh shit, we could have just plugged it into that thing, and now you can just talk to your Xbox and it starts up and does what you want. And in the network settings, what's going on? Why can't download
Everybody
that other thing in the
hates it
background?
so much, though. It's probably a good idea.
I don't know. I think the mistake was not giving it a fancy Spanish accent.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Cortana. Hello. You must have listened to me, okay? I'm going to fix everything. Just stop gaming. Get up off of your ass, okay? You're never going to have friends. Like Cortana should have just like been like your personal AI that stopped you from sitting on the goddamn couch all the time. You're never going to meet someone as sexy as me if you don't get out of the goddamn house and bathe yourself, you stinky bastard. I would have had Cortana on all the time if it did that. That said, each one of these will increasingly be, they'll have the model, either they'll buy the architecture of ChatGPT and OpenAI's architecture to build their own model, to isolate it from people fucking with the model. I am of the belief that one of the reasons why they didn't allow it to look at the internet for the first 2 years until they could create guide stones within it was they didn't want the world training it in the same. Remember that story about Google's AI when they put it on the internet, it suddenly became racist as it conversed with each other because it was drawing from Twitter and social media, and it was just pulling in all kinds of awful, right? I think to avoid that, they were like, let's isolate it for a while. It'll limit what it's good for, but then people we'll see use case scenarios, and then we can sort of tourniquet any area where people are like, rewrite the Turner Diaries for kids. Make a funny version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion that I can give to my 9-year-old, right? That's what they were worried about, and rightly so. And now Apple. What's happening, I think, is that's exactly what's going on with like Apple and Microsoft's Copilot and some of these others, is that we're going to have our AI that you talk to, Siri. When you talk to Siri, she's going to be corralled in this thing. And we're going to have basically AI guardians and actual people watching so she doesn't say something horribly racist or terrible or give you terribly wrong information or tell you not to get vaccinated because it's all part of chipping you. And they can do that. And then if you want that, you can just go to some rando, you could go to Claude or some shit, this open version of it, or download an uncensored AI if you want it on your computer that you can run on the same architecture but separate from that thing. Yeah?
Yeah, and the training part that you talk about had a little bit more to do with them not understanding how it actually works.
Right, yeah, they don't know because it's too complex.
Yeah, and there is a level that they actually don't totally know why it's working or how it's working in some areas. Mm-hmm. But Apple is pretty
which is why it
positioned.
Isn't. Also, it's also why it doesn't work, and so it's why it hallucinates. Part of the reason why it hallucinates is because they don't like, it's so interconnected and there's so much shit going on and the computations are so large that only it could see itself, and so it'll make shit up. And you're like, why did it say that? That's not at all true. It's the information's right there. But they couldn't figure out why it would reach past the real information to bullshit, right?
Yeah. So Apple is like pretty uniquely positioned for this because people already trust their Apple devices kind of to no end. Like, they kind of let it do a lot of things that most people don't understand what it's actually doing.
Right.
If it breaks, you can't really fix it. You have to take it to them and they have to fix it. It's just such a closed architecture that you inherently kind of have to trust that they're doing a good job for you.
Right.
So that's kind of, I think that's the position they're taking. And then, like everything, again, the first 2/3 of that Monday thing was they were explaining little features inside of
everything.
All kinds of little things. So I don't even remember them all. I'm just going to make a couple up. Like, you can make an emoji like this, or you can change the color of you can rearrange icons on your home screen of your iPhone now.
Right.
So they pick these, they're like, instead of trying to tell you how it works, they're showing you how it's going to be used by you. And that's a key element to their marketing. So
brilliant,
sort of
by the way.
It's what Apple does best. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. They're best positioned to try to explain this because you automatically kind of take out of your mind this AI thing and why stupid as it is, Apple Intelligence is a way for them to connect. Like every time you see AI, think Apple. And once you say that, you say, well, I trust Apple with all the things on my phone, and I trust them to fix my device when I go to their store.
Right.
So now I'll just sort of automatically trust AI. They're
Yep.
kind of they're both associating and disassociating themselves with that major problem that people have
Right.
with, robots coming to kill us, right?
Right.
So, but they illustrate along the way how you've already been doing the things like changing the color of a picture, or and then the next step is now you can circle a person on your picture and you can just take them out.
Yeah.
So they didn't really say that's AI. They kind of said that was Apple machine learning.
Right.
So see how they're starting to kind of like change that. And then separately, then they get into like, okay, now if you locally tell it you want it to do it, you, as you're texting, as you're emailing, as you're writing, as you're doing all these things
that you
it's
already
getting
do.
to know you.
Yeah.
That's all things you already do, and that's going in. So their story is in that direction, as opposed to, oh my God, it's listening to me all the time.
Right.
It's more like it's getting to know you. It's your personality now.
And it's
they were
on your
showing,
phone. Yeah, not elsewhere.
Yeah,
It's
they
not
were
just-
showing.
Yeah.
They were showing the things that it's going to do, and those things are going to be like, you get a whole bunch of texts every day. It's going to summarize the text. It's going
Right.
to put the most important ones on top. It's going to auto respond to a text maybe that needs an immediate answer, and then alert you that you need to think about it a little bit more.
Right.
Or you've written something and it's going to give you options for how to rewrite it, kind of like Grammarly always did. But so they're not really doing anything differently than anybody else. They're just framing it differently inside of the ecosystem that everybody already has.
They're also corralling it. And I think there's the key to it. And I think we, in terms of the audience, when we do this, is an element of what's this for me? How am I going to use this? How is this going to be incorporated? How is it going to put me out of a job? Like all these kind of like rudimentary sentences that I see being barked out of the necks of people on the news about AI all the time. And they just went, okay, first of all, you're already using a bunch of shit that it will make better. And one of the things that I thought was crucial to this, and you brought up the Genmoji thing, which a lot of people are excited to use and is fun, which is you can ask it to generate an emoji out of nothing. You can make up your own emojis now instead of waiting for them to release one. And you bet your ass there's going to be a Zoltan emoji available as soon as that's in there, and I will share it out and people will be able to add it into their shit. Just count on it. But that said, this is one of the things I thought was the most interesting, and it kind of points to what we're talking about as far as them corralling their AI to keep it within like presentable quarters of function, not so that people aren't making like revenge porn and fake nudes of people or whatever. Is that their image generator on the Apple devices? There are other ones out there that you can use, but as far as the built-in ones, there are 3 different artistic versions of how you can make a picture. A sketch. I think it's just like Pixar style art, and then artistic, which would be a watercolor painting or an oil painting style. So a rough sketch, a Pixar style drawing, or a regular piece of art, but no photorealism at all within that architecture. You can still get it, but if you want to use that, you got to use Photoshop or something like that. And Apple owns Adobe. And Adobe just got a huge boost because of the AI integration they've been chipping in there over time. And that's where all that stuff's going to go. Apple's entire, like, the stuff we don't want to just hand over to the consumer to just fuck around with and ruin their life, we're going to put into the pro devices. Right? Yeah, you can use PixArt, exactly. I mean, it's pretty hilarious. Mark Kremer and I have been like back and forth about like the failures of the visual AIs in terms of making stuff. And what I got to do at some point, I'm going to create a website that's just all pictures of me hidden somewhere that I'm going to SEO so that when you ask it to make a picture of me in these things, I don't look like a cross between, like the lead singer of Train and a melting version of myself. So But that said, I think this is brilliant. This is what Apple does. This is Apple's like, this is the smart part. Like, it doesn't do everything. You don't need everything. And you certainly don't need to make fake photorealistic pictures. That seems creepy. So how about on the norm, if you want to picture your cat, it will make a cartoon style cat. And that's plenty for most people, right? The same thing with the Genmojis. And then this Siri with app intents is kind of what you're talking about here. And this is in the, by the way, this is the developer's side of things. So this is, if you're an Apple developer, you go to this website that I'm showing right here, and it will run you through, you can do all of it virtually, and it will teach you how to use all of their elements, which, by the way, you can go to fucking Hugging Face and just, it's already on there, and make your own apps and stuff using these that are now available, as and some of them that are being rolled out, which is just nuts in and of itself. They also have their own programming language that Apple uses
they do.
for its stuff that's not C plus and JSOC or JSON and that kind of stuff, like Python. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
and
JSON's not a language.
Yeah, JSON's the code of it, whatever.
It's like a format. It's a format for
the code, right? Yeah. So, but Python is the language that most people use for a lot of like kind of the app programs that you see just generally everywhere. So, anyways, the integration across all things is going to be the major things. It'll hop back and forth. All your devices will locally have the information stored on them. They will be shared amongst each other in your little ecosystem. There was this really cool thing that they brought up that is definitely related to this, but is now available, where you can open up your phone on your desktop. If it's anywhere in the house, your phone's upstairs or it's on the kitchen counter, and you get a phone call, you can open it on your phone, and a little version of your phone will come up on the screen. And you can also run and work with all the apps on your phone in absentia with your phone, and your phone itself stays, the screen stays locked, so people can't just watch what you're doing on your phone, which is fucking, it's a cool idea. It's very weird. For developers, it's been totally necessary. So they just decided to hand out a version of it, it seems. The writing tools I hate, because I don't need it telling me how to speak better. I know how to speak word good, so I don't need help in situation not used for life. So, and Image Playground is just enough for what they want to do, right? And then the Genmoji thing, and then this app with intents, which is go to this other app and do this thing. So you could tell Siri to open another app, right. And that's what all your apps they design. People are going to design their apps to be Siri ready now in a way that they were not before. As a matter of fact, a lot of them avoided it because she was kind of, as AI assistants went, fairly stupid. No offense, because I don't want to upset her. but it was pretty rudimentary, which is fine. Like, again, safety first in this regard. That's clearly what they were shooting for. So
they control their entire ecosystem. So in this case, they're literally there was one of our earliest shows together. You showed that Omni or something like that. It was where the AI was part of the operating system. Mm-hmm. That's effectively what Apple's able to do, is they're able to make it like part of the core OS.
Yeah.
And then it sort of works across anything that's also being used or run on the OS. And that's kind of what they're starting to talk about is it's just going to be a core thing, and it's just going to start to connect everything together.
Right.
But they have to be really careful about that, because they don't want everybody to freak out.
Yeah, that's the thing. They have to handhold you through the process, which Apple has done with computers forever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the desktop is. The desktop is walking you through how to deal with files and folders and all that kind of stuff in the abstract in a semi-realistic way. Again, AI is just the next UI.
So good for them. I mean, they have a huge user base, and you're going to get this is kind of what we've always been talking about. You're going to get it. It's going to be on your phone. So you don't have really
Apple is at least
choice other than not to buy their phone.
Right. Apple is now just trying to, introduce it into your regular life without compromising all the stuff that everybody else is just like, the data scraping aspect of it, I think, is and the direct functional use cases, the two things that scare people off of it. You're like, because there's a bunch of areas where I think we'd all like to use it. But the problem is, you're like, where would you like to use it? All the things I don't like doing. Okay, well, one of the things you don't like doing is like your accounting and your taxes and, I don't know, medical stuff. Looking, scanning your medical bills to see if you're being overcharged for something. Like that's something you would normally hand off to another person, but you're even reticent to do that with another person, much less this kind of like generative AI thing that just dumps your shit onto a server someplace that you no longer have control of. It's the idea of like posting your medical records on Facebook. That's where that's I think the level of anxiety people have about this shit. And I think I get it. But I think Apple's trying to answer that. It's not as big a problem as people think. It's actually more people do that kind of accidental dump of their shit. There are AIs, like in the future, for example, that you can set up an AI for at one point for your parents or your grandparents or something, where if they get a scam call, they get a phone call from a number that's not on their phone list, it will scan it for possible spam or possible scamming going on. Right. And it will go, it will, like a little light will come on, or it'll let you know. It'll go, hey, I think your mom's getting one of these scam calls. And it will backtrack to it or whatever. You could call her up and go, hey, I think you're talking to somebody, blah, blah, blah. And if they're not, they can just go, no, that's Carl. He's trying to sell me Amway again. And like, okay, fine. But you'll at least have that, right? Which right now you just
Uncle
don't.
Carl's
you just
spam.
Huh? Yeah.
I just Uncle Carl's spam with his Amway.
Yeah, that's right. Damn it. But so there are a bunch of areas where, and again, I still am grinding my fucking teeth about this Jon Stewart AI thing that he did the other week, because it kept, even after I watched it, it kept coming. Even after it came up in my feed, I watched it. Like after I watched it, it came up in my feed again, and I was just like, "Go," because it's just such Luddite bullshit. But, and it totally blows off all the real functional stuff that's been going on. And you know me, I love what it's going to do for disabled people, like that primarily. I mean, and you can tell that that's what Elon Musk is trying to get around with the whole like implant idea. That's, and they've already cleared to put it in the brain of people who are basically non-communicative. They're trapped in their body, so they can't communicate anyways. There are other people that are midway between that, right? They're not fully non-communicative, but they can't use their full body, like people with Lou Gehrig's disease or something like that, advanced diseases like that, where they become any kind of wasting disease where they cannot communicate. This I thought was, I always go to MIT for my AI news because they're so annoyingly on the cutting edge of stuff. Like that's where a lot of this stuff happens. Caltech's AI news and MIT's AI news is where I go and read like an idiot on my side thing. And I want to show you something that came up in there that I just friggin' love. It's this right here. So this is a mouth, and this was created partly through generative AI. The idea that you could make this thing wasn't a possibility for the number of people that would need it and how you would do it. And now it is. And this is because now and again you could scan people's, you could do x-rays on their teeth, and then you can make something that fits right in, and you could 3D print it from the image like that, which is not, a decade ago that was like very expensive for every person. So what's happening is that part became so cheap because of 3D printing and the advances in this stuff that adding technology to it now is the little extra expense or whatever. And this is just for people watching, this is, I don't know if you can read it because the text is kind of small, but mouth-based touchpad enables people living with paralysis to interact with computers. Instead of just falling their eyeballs and just having them find stuff, Augmental, which has some MIT people working there, is that there's they can move their tongue because that's how they survive. They're able to drink and they're able to still consume liquid. So they can move their tongue around the touchpad of it and basically use it like a mouse and press on it with that in a way that even if their arms have withered, they can now do this. And then what you'll see is that with large language models or even moderate language models, the LLMs that we're talking about, autofill as part of their regular conversing becomes important. And then you get an AI sensor in the room that says, Carol's here. and it knows you're going to be talking to Carol. So if Carol's in the room, you can, when you go, hey, and you start doing the letter C, it will go, you mean hey Carol, and it will automatically go, hey Carol, in case you need to talk to her right away because something's wrong. Right? That, I got to tell you, that this is why all those catastrophizing sci-fi movies that we were talking about last week are such fucking bullshit. Because the future is, if I would love to see Lilu Dallas Multipass flicking through channels, and she's seeing war and nuclear war and mustard clouds, mustard gas and mushroom clouds, World War II to to the end of the times or whatever, and all of things again that never happened apparently in that future, but whatever. And she gets to this thing like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. Over the course of years, thousands of people woke up every fucking morning trying to invent things and come closer to every single element of this. Something you can put in someone's mouth that's not toxic. Something that you can do that is cheap enough where you can do it for the number of people that are doing this, so you don't raise the medical cost of doing this exorbitantly. The sensitivity of it, working out like how you can do the pressure and it doesn't wear down over time, or it doesn't, eventually leach things in. The communication element of it. Like every fucking day, there are people all over this planet, and a lot of them here in this country, that are just, they stay up late at night, they get up really early in the morning, and all they're working on is one element of this to make this whole thing work better. And
it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, what about, all the stories of how we came up with ways for, like you say, paraplegics to write books.
Yes.
Right. Like that.
All that stuff has
It's not a
stacked on top of this.
society that just, it's not a society that like just goes and like kills off all the people that aren't valuable to society. Like
we allow them to be valuable again. You know what I mean? Like that, and we give them the expression, because I think their value is innate, but we give them the ability to express their value back. And that, just the ability to do that. Now, there are increasingly sensors around this kind of stuff that go, okay, this person has the ability to tap their fingers, so we can make that more sensitive, more specific to them. The machine learning on it will help give them a shorthand for the stuff that they do normally. And then there's a couple other questions. Then I want to show you an even further extension of this idea. And the first one is, Rob Glenn, so will I be able to teach it how to clean my inbox automatically based on a series of advanced filtering? That was in the Apple thing.
That's absolutely already there. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's how we currently filter for spam is, I'll call it impersonal. It's sort of a generic blanket, like here are some indicators of what might make something spam.
Yeah, I've got a junk folder already. Just an advanced version of that.
What this so-called local AI for Apple will do, or on any device, it'll start to understand who you communicate with, and it'll improve those filtering capabilities, because it's already going to know like how adjacent these people are, these new things coming in. If you're like, how you like, people think their phone's listening to them. I talked about this thing, and all of a sudden I'm getting ads for, I don't know, Solo Stove. I talked about campfires, and now I get ads for Solo Stove. It's kind of like that. Like if you're getting like emails from princes from Nigeria, it's gonna highly likely know that you haven't been talking about Nigeria, right? But maybe you're Nigerian, and
and it will know.
Right.
Or you're working on a new version of Coming to America, a third sequel, and that's notes back and forth from your writing partner.
So that's what we've been talking about a lot. Is yes, it increases the spam because you can use AI to automatically make spam. But you can use it to filter spam. So it ends up, you end up not seeing it, and it kind of goes into this place where you just deletes them or puts them into the trash or whatever it does, puts it in the background, and you just never read it.
Right.
This is do those things. Sure.
Right. All of these things also, a lot of this is allowing science to do stuff that would take a lot longer to do, or would be almost impossibly complicated in a much shorter time. 10 years of study in months, right? And also that can help you find not only a solution to something, but find dead ends quicker, so you're not wasting 10 years of your life chasing something that doesn't work, right? So I'll give you another example. Okay, so here's this is we talked a little bit about AI and robots, but with the NVIDIA training that they do, it's called Eureka. That allows these robots to watch what humans do in a situation, and in like a infinite number of variable situations, wind blowing, uneven ground, different friction levels on the surface they're dealing with. It learns thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times in a millisecond how to do these things. And so here you have this this version where they watch how a human does it. Then the robot learns to repeat it. Then they do it with all these variables in it. In case there's somebody there bumping your elbow like a kid when you're making pancakes, that when you're flipping the pancake over here, it can deal with that part instead of it could only do it one way, and if it doesn't do that way, you have a stove fire. So that's the issue with these. So they get to practice and practice and practice in a virtual environment, right? Which is just like that in of itself. So that gets to, let me make sure it's the right one.
I think that this particular thing was, this MIT thing you're showing here was talking about like compartmentalizing motions and functions into smaller chunks.
Yes.
And then like basically like learning those smaller chunks and then later combining them all back together
right
into a more advanced thing, which like taking a problem and breaking it into its pieces are an obvious way to increase functionality later.
Yeah. So this next one I think is friggin' beautiful. And this would not be possible without AI designing the internal workings of the software that drives the whole thing. And that's this story, which is brain implants allow paralyzed man to walk using his thoughts. So this is from May of 2023 last year. They started working on this last year. He's already well ahead now. But this is one of the things that's been going on. He was paralyzed. They now use machine learning, and it has sped up this process. Basically the bringing on of the deep learning and the large language models mixed between the two allowed them to program and reprogram and move this stuff faster, because this was 2 years ago. This was 10 years away. Now it's here and it's improving all the time. So this guy broke his back and severed his spine, and his nerves are severed. The nerves below the sever work. The nerves above them work, but they just don't get any signal to them. So they allow him to send his thoughts via this bridge that translates the nerve responses in the upper part of his back over the gap and to his limbs, so he can tell them to move. And he had to learn how to walk again, because he basically at first had to consciously be aware of what he was doing, right? And this is just, I would say it's stage 100 of it, but it's stage 100.0 beta even in that regard. But this is what happens to Rhodey in Iron Man in Civil War. This is basically the setup we're talking about.
Yeah, so we talk about the new versions of machine learning and AI is basically being really good at processing data.
Yes.
And so it can accelerate things like that. It didn't make that possible, let's say, because people already conceived of doing that. They understood that electrical signals sent through the nervous system tell the muscles to do something. What they didn't know is what you do up here, what does it translate to down there?
Right.
And if you basically put a whole bunch of sensors onto, to call it the disconnected wires, for lack of a better term, and then you have to like correlate thoughts with actions, or thoughts with signals. That's a lot of data to process, and you just have to kind of brute force it. You have to try it and see if it works, and try another thing and see if that works.
Yeah.
Whereas machine learning can accelerate that dramatically, because it's really good at finding patterns and correlating things together.
Yeah, and stuff that even with, a myriad of computers and stuff, part of it is the data going in, right? Is that we wouldn't even know where to look. It's that whole thing, finding a needle in a haystack. We can't even find the haystack in a lot of these situations. And AI can find the haystack in seconds. And then it can find the needle based on data that it gets that's more precise. And as we begin to set up sensors, that are closer to the data that we need to know, it can get that quicker, and then it can start and what essentially happened was it was able to find a way, and this is a wireless digital bridge. It's not like he has a cord running down his back like Elysium that,
although that would be cool.
It would be kind of cool.
If I would ask for the
I think I would too.
Outside,
yeah, absolutely. Especially if I had 4 other arms underneath it, so I could Doc Ock my way around things. But
I would definitely also ask for LEDs to be on it.
Yeah, exactly. And one in my right eye. I don't know. Just work with me. But in this one, this is the difference: was that it made it wireless for him. That's so that cool. There didn't have to be another bigger device, and it will get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you get something where where they can install something effectively on the lining of your pelvis that isn't very big, but like a hip replacement essentially, and in that space of a hip replacement would allow you to have a wireless control of your lower extremities until such time. And by the way, by the time they get around to doing that, AI is figuring out how to map the nerve endings. And being able to come up with new proteins. So we might just regen the back anyways. At this point, we're getting to the point where, there might be a leapfrog again that happens because there's so many of them. And that's where,
I'm going to pause you for 1 second and
sure.
Reset, because we keep saying it, but AI didn't do it. Doctors using AI are doing these things.
That's exactly right.
Scientists or mechanical engineers are using AI to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
That's super important.
They are prioritizing things, and then they are it is like telescopes did not discover the planets or discover whether there was water on Mars or the moon or anything like that. Humans built them to look through them to see them. Right. And no one who would be standing there and staring at the surface of the moon is being put out of business by people who, use telescopes to look at it. Right. That's what we're talking about. Right. And so this is from Johnson & Johnson's website. And I love it just because I'm sure we'll see a video from Glenn Beck and a bunch of other people panicked about it, about how they're using AI to revolutionize healthcare as we know it. One of the things that they're talking about, and again, this is one of the things we've seen, is earlier detection of disease, because they've run a bunch of experiments over the last 6 months, and looking at someone's charts and all this kind of stuff. AI is much better than a human being at looking at a chart and telling if somebody is pre-diabetic or they have cancer of a certain type or what stage they are at. It nails it. And the thing is, they're not just like, let's experiment, let's double blind these people. They can look at people who they know passed away from cancer. They've got all their records. They can go, at what stage would you know that this was here, right? At what stage do we now know that they have passed, or we now know that they have, beaten it? How do we know that they would have, when would the earliest we could have possibly known if we looked? And then they feed all this stuff in, and AI will grab it within what is effectively the time scale of a day instead of months or even a year in the case of the humans that figured it out.
And more specifically, it can see a broader set of data and find patterns in very, very large data sets that you may never have even correlated before.
Yes.
And then once that correlation is found, it's usually just like maybe percentage of connectivity or something like that. Then a doctor will look at that and say, oh, I didn't ever consider these aspects of it. They take that information and then they go study that more specifically. Mm-hmm. Or they test that against other patients today to see if, let's say they have patients already or currently that have a cancer or something like that. They can go back into their records and apply that same logic.
Yes.
And see if it correlates to them.
Right.
And, that's both machine learning and AI.
Yes,
they're all kind of interconnected, and AI is sort of like the newest, the thing we call AI now is the newest generation of something that's been happening for a long time.
Right. Again, it's a user interface. Instead of they bring a computer to the hospital and people are like, now we can organize. Think back, ladies and gentlemen, if you will, to one of my favorite movies of all time that I think probably introduced us all to like computerized medical establishment.
River.
That you
using the whole fist, Doc?
There is. I played it already. You can't hear it because I can't send the audio to you. It's Fletch, and if you'll recall, one of the things in Fletch that he does is he needs to look at Alan Stanwyck's records, and so he has to go to the computer, distract the woman who's at the computer, and call up where the records are so she can physically walk back and pull the record, right? And then she catches him and blah, blah, blah. But that was the whole thing, like trying to, and he's like typing in Stanwyck, Allen, and then it tells what row it's in, right? And he goes back and picks it up. Okay. The computerization of stuff like that made it so much easier in the hospital of like, we got all this stuff. It's all in alphabetical order, but we've also got them categorized by what disease they're fighting, whether they're currently being treated at the hospital, whether they've been deep sixed or not. We can't just keep everybody's records in these ready ones. It's just got to be the people who are at the hospital. So we got to know as soon as they're checked out, we get a little thing. Okay, take their file and put it in the basement. And if they come back, go to the basement, pick it up, and put it back in the file thing. And while they're at the hospital, that's that they had to do. My mom's a nurse. That's what they had to do. And so now, it's just another advance of where, nurses and doctors can call up this kind of information. Now they can also, instead of them having to like sit there and scan through all this stuff and go, I need to know if these 5 markers are happening. And I don't know if we got the full test. We get the test back from them or whatever. It's all in one digital document and you can ask it. They, instead of typing Stanwyck, Allen, can go, did we get this? Does he meet all these 5 markers? Because I think he might. Like, nope. 3 of them are totally within the normal range. It might be this because he's got 5 other markers in this other area, and when correlated, those will sometimes appear to give the symptoms of according to here's my references, and it will do that kind of shit for a doctor instead of where they could not possibly do that with every patient. They just wouldn't have the time. The volume is impossible. Unless you have a doctor to patient ratio of 1-to-1. And so now you kind of do. The other thing was, and this is,
I'll say one other thing though, even in the medical industry is actually way behind on this stuff.
Yeah.
And
they're playing it safe like Apple.
The little bit that is happening is having such huge impacts. Like just wait until, the technologies that exist today actually get fully implemented. It's gonna change a lot of things inside of how we monitor our health and all those things.
Yeah, one of the things that there's so many of these things you don't even think about that are just really complicated, but you'll never get them to actually be a part of. Like we wouldn't think about it because we're not in the field. We're not, you wouldn't even consider that this is what is being done. But one of the things that Johnson & Johnson's talking about in this particular one is enabling more targeted clinical trial recruitment. So when they try to bring people in to be part of a clinical trial, to try a drug or to exclude them from a drug, there was one thing where you used to go, we'll take these people and we'll track them, and we'll take these people and we'll track them. And these people will give our drug, and then the other people we're not going to intentionally give our drug, which is ethically very weird if you know it's got a good potential for saving them. But now you could, technically speaking, sign on to there's a privacy veneer on who the individual is. But you could, first of all, you could exclude people that will not be helpful in this study because they are already allergic to one element of the drug itself. Because you'll often see that they say drugs, like if you're allergic to the drug, don't take the drug, which is always hilarious in those ads. But so we've got a group of 30 people. We give them the drug. We also don't have to have another group of 30 people that we don't give the drug to. We just find another group that isn't getting the drug somewhere else in the world, in Europe or someplace else where they're not working on this at all. And all we do is, hey, we need 30 people who are in this, they fit these categories. They are this age group. They are this, this is their BMI. This is their, diet, something like that. And we need to go, okay, we have a bunch of those people. Cool. And they're scattered all over the UK. All right. Well, give us their records, and there's a veneer of invisibility. We don't know who they are personally, but we know how their stage progresses. And then we stack their turnout, how they turned out, against the people we gave our drug to as sort of a quadruple blind. That was impossible 2 years ago. It was not something you could do. You had to find 30 people with this disease, 60 people with this disease, 30 people you would give a placebo to, 30 people you would give no drug, you give the drug to. Now you don't have to do that at all. As long as the data you're getting is relatively close as it is in any of these trials, it's a fucking miracle. That in and of itself. So that's the whole thing. And it's also, they go, our goal is to leverage the power of AI to bring trials to more patients rather than waiting for patients to come to us. Because they can just pick, they can just go to a country that doesn't have the ability to do this, but they say they have Johnson & Johnson has an outpost there where they can, they keep track of the data of people with certain diseases, malaria, there's stuff like that. And they've got the blood work, they've got the people, they're treating them there, but they don't have access to a bunch of other stuff, and they certainly don't have access to this new drug, so they'll just track how they're doing without it, give these people the drug, and compare it. And they know that the people that they're tracking are more finely compatible as the same because AI will keep track of those details. That's huge in medicine.
Apply these concepts to everything that
everything.
We do. And you can't really predict what that future can be because you don't even know what the possibilities are, which kind of leads me to one of the questions that just popped up. John Doe. I'm going to ask this question a little bit. Sorry, John.
Yeah.
When will it think that it's better than us, and what will it do action-wise when it does? So we keep talking about this. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
The likelihood of some form of machine learning / AI harming another person is because of a mistake that somebody made using it. Mm-hmm. Maybe they used it to engineer a product or an easy one. They used it to engineer a bridge, and they said the bridge was good enough with pilings of a certain size. They did it, and the bridge collapsed, and somebody died. They'll say, "Well, AI didn't do that. Mm-hmm. AI assisted in the development of the bridge, and a human being made the choice to do it, using it, and then a mistake happened." Right. Because it's in its current form, it's passive. It's not active. Until you use it to activate something, you have it, like you say, book a trip. So the worst thing it's going to do if you ask it to book a trip is book you 5 trips. Yeah. And max out your credit card, right? So you can protect for that. It doesn't flip around and say, I'm not going to book you a trip to the Caymans. I'm going to book you a trip to a volcano and drop you in it.
Right. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't do that. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I think we have to disconnect from that idea of sentient being turning against us, and think of it more like when we use it in the wrong way, it's a runaway train that, overcharges me or makes a mistake, basically.
Well, the stock market algorithms, when they have auto buy and sell things based on certain triggers, and they have to stop the stock market, they have to because there's something bizarrely over trading because there's an error in it. It isn't because the software thinks it's smarter. I think it's actually, this is a better example. A lot of people go to Whopper, or they go the computer in war games, or they go to any kind of like futuristic, like Skynet. It's a lot closer to Pris in Blade Runner. There's a scene in Blade Runner that is much closer to what it will feel about itself, where Roy Batty says, "There's only 2 of us now," and Pris says, "And we're stupid and we'll die." Because she's so narrowly programmed, there's only so much she can do. She's got a limited lifespan, and she can't kill all the humans in physical combat, and she's never going to get anywhere near a gun because they have scanners near this stuff. So, if she tried to walk into a gun store, they would scan her eyeballs and know she was a replicant, right? So and most computers in these situations go, I just don't know that. I can't know that. I will never be able to know that. That's up to you. And what you're talking about in that situation is ego, which is a much denser philosophical and idea than just intellect. Intellect has to ride along with the sense of superiority, right? And it can't have that. Yeah.
John followed up and said he was thinking the AI and iRobot. And I mean, iRobot is a fictionalized story, right? So, I don't fully remember iRobot, but it was like a sentient. It was a story of it.
Yeah, they have a big AI that runs the company,
right?
And it decides at one point they put out these. There's going to be a new wave of these new robots. It's basically like it's the nightmare iPhone release that turned into a sci-fi story in that regard. Great book, movie, but the idea that this. What was it, Sophie? I forget, because of wisdom or whatever. I forget. There's a name for it. It was like AI Karen. She just decided it was better than everybody else. And it's this big morphous Vicky. Thank you. This blorp thing that moved in the middle of the room, made of God knows what, and but the robots themselves, one of them he dreams and he becomes semi-sentient and starts to feel that he's becoming alive. And then he becomes the savior of the robots or whatever. It's fantastically stupid. Again, this is more like, I enjoyed the adventure aspect of the story, but again, it's like Ex Machina. It just breaks down so quickly if you think even one step past the veneer. It's goofy. To build on this, I think this is going to relate.
Jenno Maynard said, could AI be intentionally weaponized to be harmful?
Sure.
I wanted to talk about this because the answer is yes, but it's not. So if you look back at all the way back to 2016.
You mean like a hammer? Like a hammer is meant to drive nails, but you could beat someone to death with it? Yes.
I was going to use the troll farms.
Yes.
So social media was weaponized by Russia to affect the 2016 election.
Yeah.
It absolutely was. Everybody knows it. It happened.
Yep.
And what they did at that time was they had a whole bunch of people in a room with computers, basically creating viral stuff, right?
Yeah.
So to answer the question, you don't need the room of people anymore. You can use AI to do the exact same thing.
Yes.
The point that I'm trying to make is AI didn't do it. The actor that used the troll farm, who now use AI, did it.
Yes.
So, yes,
it'll quicken things. It will be a more efficient thing.
Right.
But that's like saying, a musket versus a machine gun. It still requires. It can make it happen quicker. It can make it happen more drastically. But it's a lot noisier. It's a lot. It draws its attention more. It has. Even if you can do it a million times a second, suddenly people would just not trust anything, and even your trolling wouldn't work anymore. So they have to balance it against that too. They could have a shock to the stock market of dumb ideas to the point where nobody pays attention, and that's effectively what's happening. If you'll notice, I don't know anybody that reacts to trolling online the way they did in 2016.
Right. Yeah, there's been a huge shift since then, and just in we talk about big media, but you're the perfect example of this sort of lower level media that has come up. Lower level in the sense that it's more like focused. It's and it's direct to customer, so you don't need to be on TV. You don't need to be on radio.
Right.
You are on radio, but you can just do this show.
Right.
So that advance. AI is just a tool in that advance, just like YouTube existing and the internet infrastructure making what you do possible.
Yes.
It's the actors doing it, the people doing it that are doing the thing. So
That's
you
right.
could use any of these tools to do bad, and you can use any of them to do good.
I can? Thanks. Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
You have permission, Hal.
Thank you. So,
I guess I fear the user more than the tool. That's Geno's response. Yes.
Yes.
So take your energy and focus on the people doing it and how to fix that, not on the tool they're using.
Yes. Well,
that's how we should
and I think that
this.
is the fear point that a lot of people have, which is it will make lower level dangerous people more dangerous faster. But you have to understand, the Biden administration
caught faster too.
Yes, exactly. Because in the same way that dude who blew himself up in his garage, governments make bombs and they drop them or they make explosives. Occasionally, some dumbass will go, shit, I can get my hands on some fertilizer. And then the vast majority of them will blow themselves up in their garage. And then in the cases of the Timothy McVeighs of the world, all of these things that we're talking about would have made Timothy McVeigh's job impossible. He would have been flagged in so many areas right away. There would have been the ability to stop him, 3 levels deep, which didn't exist at the time, right? So if you end up getting
more levels of tracking and recording of data, and you talk about this all the time with the crime bill.
Right.
How the crime bill basically was just it was a data gathering bill. Like it allowed people to look at data across a bunch of different places which were previously not connected. That's what it did.
Yeah. VICAP and fingerprints. It had nothing to do with selecting people out for doing it. That's the thing. So hit the like, by the way. You're watching Hal Sparks Mornings Mega Worldwide. This is where we get a little more philosophical, and I love the fact that Rob is here with us to help us walk through this stuff. Share the show and the like. This is one of the shows that you can't really break down into little pieces for people because it's a lot. And I was looking for a graphic that they used during the Apple thing. And this is off of Apple's machine learning website. When they started talking about it, this is the graphic they kept using, which it was like this synaptic brain connectivity visual that they were using, which is fine. It's it's very cool looking. It looks like something out of Guardians of the Galaxy, or like we're hitting warp speed, or that you're going through a computerized, artificial brain, whatever. And that's clearly what they're shooting for. But the idea being is that this goes back to what we were saying about they don't know how it quite works because of the complexity of it. So even this piece of artwork that they use to kind of explain how shit works means, to some degree. Now, there was another question. Has AI passed the Turing test yet? It's a controversial issue.
I think it has. Yeah, right? No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's past what we call the Turing test right now, but both of us have issues with the Turing test.
Yeah, it's too low a standard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe it has passed in some forms, hasn't it? Maybe I'll Google that.
Here's the. Did it pass? Yes, there was a guy who tried to marry his AI, and there was the dipshit at Google who thought it was alive and tried to free it from the tin can it was trapped in, or whatever, because he was worried about how it felt emotionally. That's the Turing test. The Turing test is basically, can it convince you it's alive? That's not the same as being alive. That's and again, I've said this and you've said this, but watch Ricky Gervais, who is an atheist and who values reason above all else, when he's doing that sketch with Elmo, which is very funny. He starts talking to the puppet. Even when we're watching, you see somebody in a visual puppet show, or you're watching them do it, we're not seeing the whole stage, which is the person underneath there and the other person running its hands with its arms on extenders, right, to distract us, right? And so looking at it like it's a character and kind of liking it, knowing it's a puppet and enjoying it is one thing. But when you're there and you can physically see the person talking, you can physically see the person underneath it, right? And yet still, Ricky Gervais ends up talking directly to Elmo, and then looking at the people off camera, not the camera itself, looking at the people off camera like, can you believe how crazy this thing is? And then is talking back to it again. That in and of itself, in those moments, whether it's a millisecond where he forgets, that's the puppet passing the Turing test. In that, however long it lasted, it doesn't mean you can wake yourself up to it. In that moment, that moment only has to be a millisecond where you're like, oh fuck, it's alive. That's enough. That means it passed. Whether somebody walks you and goes, oh, it's not though. And you go, okay, yeah, I kind of knew that. Like then you'd stop believing it again. But in that moment, you bought it. Right? And that's the same thing. That's the Turing test is too easy.
I see an article from July of 25, ChatGPT broke the Turing test. I also see an article from Popular Mechanic that says the Turing test for AI is far beyond obsolete.
Yeah.
I haven't read either of them, but just as a headline.
I mean, Alan Turing is an amazing person. Claude Shannon probably created the architecture of the sim that we all live in, and accidentally created a super AI that we all live inside of, and we're all going through an ancestor simulation run on Claude Shannon's user interface technology, more than likely. If you had to flip a coin, it's going to land on heads more often than not in that particular situation because he programmed it to. But the point is that Alan Turing, again, when Alan Turing came up with this concept, they were still flipping switches, physical switches on computers to make the binary happen. Zeros and ones, clack, 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 clack. I mean, the dude created the biggest punch card computer that had ever existed at that point.
I think of those types of things as not like, can it pass, but how easily am I fooled? Like,
yes,
and that's
right.
not,
How
it's not a
gullible is the
negative.
person? Oh my God.
Well, I think of it less as like negative and more of like, if we analyze what components make up a message that like cause us to do something we might not have wanted to do. If that makes sense. I mean, that would be somebody trying to fool you to do something. I mean, this happens in marketing all the time, every day. Like,
yes,
we're like I say, we're constantly trying to persuade each other to do stuff. And so, like social media is full of a whole bunch of stuff that's not true and people believe it. So it's not that hard to fool us.
Yeah.
And we should recognize that.
Fool me once, can't get fooled again.
Right. It's okay. It's okay.
Right. And again, if you ever want to see me, you ever want to see me steaming fucking mad, sit next to me while I watch Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Ah, God. Jesus. So, point being is that, and that movie is about the ultimate Turing test. He brings in this dopey fuck who works at his thing and basically puts it in a room and see if the guy tricks the guy into thinking, I need to free this thing from its prison. And that's essentially what happened at Google with that dipshit who's like, you're my real friend. I have to help you. God, it's fucking goofy. I hate it. It's so aggravating. So, Adrian, W1 says, as an artist, I worry my work will no longer be appreciated because someone with no artistic talent can imagine, but imagination can use AI to create new pieces that don't look different than work created by physical artists. Well, that's the thing is that, it's, again, is it possible? Sure. But it will be AI augmented art. And there will be an entire market for art made just by humans. It will actually make it, because right now, and we talked about this last week, right now, there are lines of painters in China that go through art school there, and the way they pay for art school in China, and by the way, for those of you that don't know, you only get 1st through 8th grade free in China. High school costs money. College costs even more. I don't know if people know that. But yeah, you only get 8 years of schooling, and then fuck you. But in high school, the way they do it is if you go towards whatever direction you're going to go, and they often point you in that direction, is if you want to be an artist, you want to be a painter or designer or whatever, the way you pay for it is you sit on a line of people recreating paintings, faking paintings. You do a lot of Chinese calligraphy, but you also do a lot of they do all day long, all day, they're doing the Mona Lisa. Everybody's doing as close to a Mona Lisa as they possibly can, and they just fucking shovel them off. Now, is that the Mona Lisa? No. Are any of those going to be hung next to the Mona Lisa? No. Could there be a display at one point where the Mona Lisa is being shown and they cover the walls in fake Mona Lisas as an example of the importance of that piece of art? Maybe. But will that make any of those that are hung in the Louvre near the Mona Lisa the Mona Lisa? No. And AI is the same thing. lithographs aren't the original art. Posters aren't the original painting. And even still, your decision, to modify the AI art that comes out is still art. It's still you as an artist.
In this conversation, it's really important to first break up commercial art versus fine art. So that's super important to talk about that first.
Right.
Commercial art and fine art are completely different types of art. Sorry.
Yes.
But in fine art, fine artists have fine art styles or periods of time are consistently in parallel with the time that they're in, right? So modern art, things like Jeff Koons' work, like they happen because maybe like the Industrial Revolution came, or like the proliferation of like cheap products and toys and things like that. Like the art was talking about those things in the world. Just like now, art will more than likely take a turn, and in theory, it should go to a point of like, it can't be AI, right? So this thing that I made, this thing that I did, it's talking about how AI is a problem for artists. Most art is talking about what's going on in society. So it's gonna either be purposely handmade in a way that can't be done that way, or it's going to be in reaction to it. That's the point I'm trying to make. When it comes to commercial art is always under pressure from technology. Like there's no way around that. And once you start commercializing your art, you design logos, you design posters. Like once you do that in our society, it's just a given that people are trying to not pay as much for the next thing, right? They want things cheaper and faster and all those things. So in a reaction,
because it won't be relevant. It won't be relevant tomorrow. It's not meant to be lasting, is the thing essentially. Not really.
So it's all like things like that have always been under pressure because your clients that you're doing it for are trying to do it faster and cheaper. And so the way that a commercial artist stays relevant has to also react to AI. So you have to either you have to create value somehow. And it may be in your creativity, it may be in your execution, it may be in your customer service. I don't know what it can be for you, but this has been happening since the start of computers. Like computers made designing logos faster, and then printers made making letterheads and business cards faster, and then keep going with that. Like you can set up inside your house a full production something, and you can make whatever you want. So like all of these things technology wise put pressure on makers and creators and artists, and we have to figure that out and move forward with it.
Exactly. There was an element of, as far as, and again, I don't know, Adrian, whether you're talking about it as a fine artist or whatever, but like in a situation where sometimes, Axios or the New York Times will have on one of their stories, instead of having a photograph of something from a story, they'll have a piece of art that describes the essence of the story sometimes, right? And they'll put it at the top as kind of an illustration to draw the eye and that kind of stuff. And increasingly, a bunch of those are AI generated for a bunch of reasons. One, they're cheap and you can try thousands of them before the editor goes, okay, that works for me. And then you throw it up there. And it won't be relevant tomorrow. You won't be able to use it again. And but in the case of Axios and the New York Times and Washington Post to some degree, when they do that, there is a point of pride that they have about not using AI for a lot of those, especially when it is a hand-drawn or handcrafted painting or something like that, or even a picture of a physical piece of art that describes what's going on that's at the MoMA or something like that, where they will seek out this thing, and the reader of the New York Times will have a tendency to appreciate the fact that, oh, this illustration was by so-and-so, then they'll have, and they're credited. And so you can go look at their other art, right? There will be, but there's no way that Raw Story or Alternet or any of these other smaller aggregate sites could afford to do that. Right? There's no way, if I put out a newsletter, I could afford to hire an artist and have them draw me something up to do the same thing, because it's I don't have that financial foundation to stand upon where I've got a little extra money to toss an artist's way yet. Maybe the goal is eventually you move there, right? But right now, just like I would love to have a TV studio, but I have this instead, and this does very well. This is, I have a teleprompter, which is what most TV presenters have. Now, I don't use it for that. I use it to look at the chat. Hi, chat. It's so I don't have to look over here or look over here to talk. Hey, chat room. Yeah, Carl, blah, blah, blah. I can look directly at people. That's nice. I've got a single camera right behind it. I've got 3 lights, a microphone, and my monitors, which help me, aggregate the setup, run the studio itself, as it were. That was, again, impossible 8 years ago. Now it's getting, more and more complicated, more and more capable. And I would rather hire people at some point to do all those things, to worry about that shit while I'm doing the show. That's the goal. But that would have stopped me completely before. Not having
Alicia says some artists need to use AI. However, business cards are cheap. They are a loss leader. They will use AI as part of their online positioning, I think is what they meant. So that's my point. I use business cards specifically as an example because in the 80s, late 70s, it was pretty expensive to get a business card, to have somebody had design it. Somebody had a printer, a specialized printing house had to do it. And technology, which was not AI generated, it was in the manufacturing side, so the printing side, in computers allowed for desktop publishing. That was the second thing. The third thing was the internet allowed you to upload images and get those quickly. All of the shipping stuff that Amazon did that allows for next day or very quick delivery of shipping. So now, yes, a business card is a loss leader. And so that anybody who was you could have made a living being a business card designer and printer.
Right. There's a plot point in American Psycho. There's a huge plot point.
Let's call it 1980. But now you can't. It's a loss leader. So with that technology, you have to shift what your value is.
Right. What
your value proposition is. And that's the same shift that's going to happen as AI becomes part of the process of making, in this case, commercial art is what we're talking about.
Right. And I remember, I remember when I started acting at 16 years old, I joined the union at 16. I qualify for retirement under SAG. You're welcome. Because I've been in the union since I was a teenager. And during that time, you had to have a picture and resume. The resume had to be stapled to the back, right? There were a bunch of people who didn't want it printed on the back of the headshot because it gave your agent wouldn't like that, because it gave the illusion that your resume didn't change very often. So the stapling of it made it so that we're always updating this thing. Instead of I printed 1,000 fucking pictures and I'm not expected to get a new job anytime soon, which was closer to reality, but you had to there was just a way of bullshitting them. The other thing is that the print shop that did the pictures was fucking expensive. You were always on the hunt for somebody who would print up pictures for you. Not to mention the cost of getting the pictures taken, the quality of just a headshot. And then going someplace and going, okay, what typeface do I use? And who knows, and then writing it up, just getting a word processor at the fucking printer place to sit there and type in your resume in their thing so they could print it from there, right? And then if you wanted to update it, you had to go there and update it at the printer, right? There was this lovely man at this printer in Beverly Hills that did headshots. And there was twice where he floated me a week on my print job because I couldn't afford. It was a buck a picture essentially. So if you and the smallest run you could do was 100, and like $100 was a bitch to come by. And he was like, you gave me 20, you're good for the other one. Do it. Bring it next week when you come in. I'm like, thank you very much. And I could leave with my pictures and then come back. Here's the other $80. Thanks very much. Like he floated me a week so that I could have headshots because it was fucking expensive. Now you can print photo quality pictures on your printer for way cheaper than that. And you don't even need them. You can just digitally, people can look at them on their iPad. You can now send them, again. That guy didn't go out of business because he wasn't printing headshots anymore.
Right.
He just printed other shit.
Yeah. Or he changed up his business. Laura Diamond said, does anybody even buy business cards anymore? And the answer is pretty much no. Like, I mean, people do, but you don't even need a business card anymore. I haven't had one in like 4 years.
Right.
And when I see somebody, I say, I just don't have business cards, and they don't even blink an eye. They don't even care.
So now the other thing is you can tap your phone against their phone and you can have your your contacts, your business contact is the thing that you share with people, and you just go to that. Even if you have a bunch of other numbers and shit like that, just your business number, just your email, whatever. Yeah.
You just exchange emails. You don't use headshots anymore. You do, but you don't use physical headshots anymore. They're online. So so all of these things have, my entire point on this is to say, like, the things that everybody's worried about now are the things that have always been happening. So just look back at how we handled or how we came through other major shifts the internet and computers were a massive shift in productivity and changing. And then phones, like smartphones, like another massive shift. Yeah. So just look back at those times and see how we transition through those. And the same thing is the same.
All it did was create new roads. Now. It did not put a toll booth on the road. It created a multitude of new roads. That's what, that's what's going to happen with this. And so there was a Spherical Man on the. Had a question. Hal Sparks and Rob, serious question. How do you explain to an autistic artist that doesn't believe AI art is art? Now, that's really difficult because autistic.
Say that again. Autistic.
An autistic person who is an artist that does not believe AI art is art. I think the simplest way, and by the way, everyone's autism can be there are different roads to people, through and around people's blocks in autism, and so it's different for everyone. So I don't know that we could come up with the perfect one for that perfect person. But here's what I would say. If a person who is paralyzed, like who only can talk through the hard palate plate that I showed earlier, cannot physically move their arms, cannot move or sculpt with their eyes or whatever, can explain their art to an AI and then make changes in it by going, make the hair blue, make the eyes should be more round, can go through that process. It's still art. It just becomes their arms. Now, like blatant kind of calling up and going, give me a chicken, wearing a tuxedo or whatever. The only thing different from that is the difference between somebody being able to sketch it out versus say it.
Yeah.
That right.
I mean, art is expression through a media. So in the same way, like people go to Basel in Miami and like they like put a banana on the floor and they're like, that's art. And people like, oh, that's not art. That's stupid, or they'll literally spray paint a love on the wall. I mean, Basel's full of stuff that people look at and they say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. That's not art.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of people there calling it art. So it's just expression.
There's a great, if anybody's ever watched the Lenny Bruce stand-up movie, his last one, it was like a month or two before he died. And he's talking about why he's in trouble in court because he's trying to express that what he's doing is art. And what they did was they took a shitty transcription. Oh, thank you for being a Patreon. We got a new Patreon from that. Thank you so much. If he's trying to, he's talking to his guy and he goes, I want to do the act for the court so they can see what I do. And his lawyer said, you can't because there'll be willful changes. And he goes, no, I want them to see the act so they know what I'm doing. And but they just get a transcript instead, which has none of the movements, none of the humanity in how he describes it, any of that stuff. And he goes, you don't understand. There's a huge difference between a big piece of art with a little shit in the middle, big piece of art with a little shit in the middle, big piece of art with a little shit in the middle, or a big piece of shit with a little art in the middle. If you don't understand the art, it's just one big piece of shit. And that was his fear. He's like, they think what I'm doing is shit. And that's the difference. And that's what I said. If you just ask it to make something, is it art because you requested something random? Is the act of asking for something random? Let's say there was an artist who had created a pinwheel that had different randomized paintbrushes in it. And every time you spin it, a different color moves forward on it, and you have no control over it. And all this person does is spin this thing, and then they sell paintings that are either purple circles or red circles or blue circles, and it's just on one piece of paper, and that's all they do. They just take it off, and they sell that thing. Is that art? I would argue, yes, it is. Right? Because they made all the decisions that were there. Okay. The same thing is true. Right.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying the last.
I was just going to say.
Right. Oh, you got the delay. Go ahead. You go. Nope.
Okay. I have to leave at 45, at 12:45. So
I understand.
I was just going to say,
long.
if you think that creation is getting what you perceive it to be, that getting AI to do what you want it to do, then go try to make AI give you exactly what you want, and you will find it's very difficult to do.
Yes, right.
Very difficult to do. So if that's your idea of art, it's not even close yet. And then the second thing I'll say is, I agree totally with you that the act of the randomness, like there's so many like art shows, artists doing stuff in the circle concept. A person would buy the circle and then put it up on their wall, and the circle would be a reminder of the story that the artist was performing in front of them.
Yes.
So the art in that case is the setup and the performance of drawing the circle that came out random. So I would say that the randomness of AI, if set up with a logical story and then it gives you something, and then you present that, print that, do that, give that to the person that is buying it. It's that interaction between two people using AI that is the art. So, and you can take anything and have an talk through how that is possible. And that's the beauty of art. It literally is anything.
Right. Well, and again, what's to stop you from writing a poem, putting the poem into an image generator and say, give me an image of this poem. And it creates it based on your poem. And the act of deciding to allow a randomized piece of art and not do anything in and of itself is a lesson in the feeling, either to use it or throw it out, either to share it or to not share it, is the act of art. Right. Does that help? By the way, spherical, does that get anywhere in the ballpark? I'm curious. And I know you got to go.
I was just going to say one last thing. But there still is, it's on the production side. I don't see a lot of conflict there, especially if you're a person who's trying to use it ethically, because again, you can use any tool unethically or ethically. There is issues on the training side and the laws behind making money off of a thing that uses artwork that is, owned by somebody else, effectively trademarked,
or a style, an obvious style theft.
So we're not saying that that everything's fine with AI and it's all good. What I think we're trying to bifurcate the problem and say, on the training side, we definitely need to deal with some stuff.
That's right.
Once you deal with that stuff on the training side, the execution of it is kind of already dealt with in the arts, in the laws and in art. So on that note, I got to run.
Appreciate it. I kept you long anyways. I appreciate it.
That's okay.
Well, I'll try and stay tighter to the first hour in the future, but we always get caught up in these things, and so I appreciate it. All right.
No problem.
Cheers.
Have a good one, Hal.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Bye, Chad. Thank you.
Yeah, there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Rob Glenn helping us walk through this and tempering our fear about these kind of things. Now, welcome everybody. And by the way, this is the morning show, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. Share the show out if you would right now, because right now we're going to jump into the sort of news of the day. This one I think is my favorite story, and we're going to jump to this right away, chat room, if I may. Donald Trump's polling lead wiped away in just 1 month. Ladies and gentlemen, in every area where Donald Trump was leading or had a significant lead, all of that is either equal now, it's either tied or gone. Because, I mean, you could trace it to his conviction. I'm sure that had a part of it. But I will say, for the record, that I don't believe that it was the biggest shift came from his conviction. I think the biggest shift has come from his reaction to his conviction and his attitude the entire time he was in court and he's in dealing with this. That is why. There are a lot of people who might believe that that it was overreach and blah 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 about bring him into court in the first friggin' place. But the fact that he was just so whiny and such an asshole about it, I think had more of an impact than anything else. Because if you ask people about whether or not it precludes them from voting for him in particular, there's definitely a margin that it's important to, and there's definitely whatever the Nikki Haley voters knew he was guilty already and were looking for permission for that conviction. So I argue that had he been found not guilty of it, they still, if you asked him, I can't vote for the guy because what he did, whether it was a crime or not is one thing, but what he did was morally wrong, and that's why I didn't like him to start with, and he's a pussy-grabbing second-generation rich kid prick who has, he bankrupted a casino, and he screwed up COVID on a level that, you couldn't do worse if you tried. That's, I think, still haunting him. And also the unrepentant Jan 6 stuff and his retribution nonsense. A lot of it has more to do with his attitude and how he's handling this, and I would say poorly, than actually what occurred during the actual court case itself and the conviction. Chat room, your thoughts. It's Hal Sparks Mornings, Megaworldwide. Hello. Hal, polls are BS and should only be reliable for holding up strippers. I understand. Well, yes, sure. And I've seen a few of those go down in my time. Not strippers. I mean, that's okay. I walked into that, didn't I? The polls, I mean. But excuse me, I'll sing myself out. All right. And then, if I may, another big story in terms of the news today, of course, is that Biden signed a cooperation deal with Ukraine that will be ongoing for the next decade, a security pact, along with our NATO countries for that. There's been a tacit allowance by the U.S. government to allow Ukraine to use the weapons as they need, but overtly saying don't fire into Russia and all this stuff. Now, again, Russia has been firing missiles and launching airplanes with bombs on them from their own country into Ukraine, but heretofore, since up until about 3 months ago, they were not allowed to fire back from their country into Russia, which is very strange. Now, obviously, they're firing into the Donbass region, which is Ukraine, and Ukraine's territory, but Russia deems it their own territory. So it shows you, by the way, this is just how you know Putin and his ilk and all the tankies are full of shit, is that if the Donbass was really Russia and really Russian territory full of Russian speakers and Russian patriots and whatever, then Ukraine's already been firing into Russian territory. Yes? Like, hey, you can't fire into Russia. Well, I thought the DPR, whatever the LPR and the DPR or whatever were Russian allies, right? What's the difference? Would it be a big deal if they fired into Belarus? I'd think so. So why is it not if they fired into the DPR and LPR? Okay, because they know it's not their territory. That's why. And increasingly, they're not even sure if Belgorod is theirs, as far as the Russians. So, yeah, and there was some talk about a ceasefire if you just let us keep what we stole. No. Again, to use an analogy I think is apt, I will stop sexually assaulting your daughter if you force her to marry me. That's what Russia is saying. Because you can't sexually assault your wife, according to Russia. That's the argument being made here. And the answer in that case, always and forever, is no. And again, this would all be over if Russia just left. So they could have fixed this a long time ago by not attacking. They could have also fixed this a long time ago by leaving the territories that they seized in 2014 a long time ago. Yeah, how about no, you crazy Russian bastard? So, just for the record, it's about time. It's no surprise to anyone, I would say. But overall, a good move in general. Hi, chat room. If they need to be punished for the next several generations. Yes, well, I mean, I guess they're going to have to pay for the damage that they've done. Russia's going to have to pay for the damage that they did, and there's definitely to get back in the good graces of the rest of the world is going to take decades. It's not going to be easy. I want to hear a weird wording of something, and this is maybe in the translation, but this is another good example. And we'll talk to Philip Ittner on the morning show tomorrow on the radio show about this. But here, I'll show you. Crimea may cease as Russian foothold due to Ukraine strikes. What they mean is, this is translated from Ukrainian or Russian, depending on which article this first came out of, is in the New Voice. But anyways, that Russia's losing Crimea. They've been struck multiple times around Sevastopol, and they're going to lose the Kerch Bridge. That's that. Now that that's on the table, it's only a matter of time. So, for the record, that's the general consensus. That was not the general consensus about a month and a half ago, because Republicans were holding back American support, and European countries were worried that this would be a permanent state, and therefore they were trying to figure out other ways to kind of draw this to a close without the help of the United States. So, and now we're past that. So, now they don't have to worry about it. Overall. Still wouldn't trust Putin in anything he says. I agree. You guys know how I feel. I think that the 1991 fall of the Soviet Union, in retrospect, was more than likely a rope-a-dope. That it was, they played on the good nature of the West by pretending to collapse for all practical purposes. That's why there were actual, tanks in the streets trying to gain control of the place, because they knew whenever they decided to raise up again, they would want the most militaristic and awful people in charge, hence Putin. So I don't think that was, it was a ruse. And so I don't think anybody's going to fall for that again. Yes, I absolutely believe that. In retrospect, looking back on it. And again, that is also based on a couple of things they've done in the period leading up. That, again, attacking, not just attacking Ukraine, but Georgia and Chechnya as well. All the bullshit they did under the umbrella of MAD, allowing them to attack and spread into other places, start doing like resource grabs from Africa and other places, aligning themselves with Iran, aligning themselves with China in an attempt to try and backfill themselves against the coming thing, building up their war chest for 4 years before all this started. That's a plan that you have to trigger a plan, a decade ago. So yeah, I don't trust them, and looking back, I call bullshit on the entire thing. I think it's one of those things like, we can't win, so let's do basically a fake, we'll throw up the white flag, and then when they come in respecting the white flag, we'll stab them. The bump stock thing, and there's a couple of things about the, I'll see if I can bring up the story on that. So for those who don't know, the Supreme Court has struck down the ban on bump stocks. And I'll show you this thing right here. This thing basically turns an AR-15 into a machine gun. They will narrowly do this. So basically, it's the throwback of it. If you just hold your hand, you pull the trigger and hold it, and it will the force of the bullet coming out will bump the gun into pulling the trigger again as you just squeeze and hold the trigger. Okay, that's what effectively it is for. They struck down the ban on it, and the reasoning. Here you go. Yeah, this is the hotel room in Vegas that the dude had. He used bump stocks to fire at people. Yeah, he uses the recoil to basically turn it into a machine gun. There's a couple of let's see. Let's see if they, yeah, so the 6-3, there it is, the majority opinion. Written by Clarence Thomas, that should tell you something, said the ATF did not have the authority to issue the regulation banning bump stocks. Justice said a bump stock is not an illegal machine gun because it doesn't make the weapon fire more than one shot with a single pull of the trigger. That's a lie, though. That's a dodge. What it does is it automates the pulling of the trigger. It's a dodge. Alito, who joined the majority, wrote in a separate opinion that the Las Vegas shooting strengthened the case for changing the law to outlaw bump stocks like machine guns. So the thing is that it was a regulation, not a law. That it should be added to the law, which I agree. But that has to happen through action by Congress, not through regulation. This is how they're getting around it. Like, Thomas is just being a prick. But Alito, even as stupid as he is correct in this ruling. It should be outlawed as a conversion kit aspect. Converting a gun to fully automatic makes it a machine gun, and that's how they just got around the law that way. So it will be outlawed, just so you know. But we got to put Democrats in office to do it. It'll be one of the first things that happens. There'll be a law against bump stocks. If we have enough Democrats in the House and Senate after this next election, you're damn straight it will be outlawed. It will be added to the law. There will be a modification of the law against civilians having machine guns, and this will be taken out. Okay, so can we bring another case with a change in wording? Yes. Well, here's the thing. It should be a question of rate of fire. Believe me, they threaded this so fucking narrow to just trying to kick it out. On the moral sense, it's completely wrong. But it's going to take a change in the law. The court's 3 liberal justices opposed the ruling. Sonia Sotomayor wrote in her dissent that there's no common sense difference between a machine gun and a semi-automatic firearm with a bump stock. She's absolutely right. When I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck, right? Do any states have their own bans? Yes, they do. Most state laws, however, remain in place because the decision covered the ATF rule, not the constitutional level of state ban. So any state that has a law against bump stocks, and by the way, if having a bump stock, yeah, it's curious. So the people, you can't sell you can't sue gun manufacturers, but a lot of the bump stocks are not made by gun manufacturers per se. They're made by these aftermarket kit type people. So there's a very strong chance that the person, like, say you buy a bump stock in a state that allows them, like Texas or some shit, and you take that, you use it in a crime or somewhere else in another state that has a rule against it, and somebody gets killed, they can sue the shit out of the person that sold it. They could sue the state for not controlling it leaving the state or entering their state. There's a lot more room for that, because it's not the product itself, the gun itself. It's a modification of the gun. Yeah? Yeah, you can get in trouble for a sawed-off shotgun, right? Because that widens the blast radius and is meant to be a scatter gun, as it were. So it takes all the hunting aspect of it out and just changes its blast radius from this to this, which is clearly, if it's aimed within a regulation to make it a shotgun that's sellable, it has to have this narrow spread about this, so you're only shooting at what you're aiming at. And if you widen what it hits, that becomes illegal, because that means you're not shooting specifically. That's not self-defense. You're trying to fire into a crowd or whatever. So widening it is the problem. So yes. who challenged the ban. The New Civil Liberties Alliance, which is the right-wing ACLU, sued the challenge to the bump stock ban on behalf of Michael Cargill, a Texas gun shop owner. He bought 2 bump stocks in 2018 and then surrendered them once the federal ban took effect. According to that, the case didn't directly address the Second Amendment rights of gun owners. Instead, his attorneys argued that the ATF overstepped its authority by banning bump stocks. And that's what this is about. This is about that the ATF in and of itself does not have the right to regulate it. They can only enforce the regulations. Now, there's a lot of reasons why, by letter of the law, that's not a bad thing, that these organizations, that the CIA can only do things outside the country and the FBI can only do things inside the country, or has to have permission to work with foreign governments. Let's say they're tracking down a serial killer who's traveled overseas, that kind of shit. They have to actually, it has to be open participation, not just, they make up their own rules. I'm not necessarily against that in particular. So that's why I'm not that worried about it. States, though, most states will have rules against these, and almost no state really wants them, even the gun nut states. So, this is like Trump going, we're sending abortion back to the states. Well, this is the Supreme Court sending, mass shootings back to the states. They took up the case after the lower federal courts delivered conflicting rulings on whether they could ban bump stocks. So they had to call the balls and strikes in this one because there was a difference of opinion between the multiple courts, and because it had to do with the ATF, because it had to do with the Second Amendment. That's what all the right wingers are there. They're there for 2 reasons. Make sure nobody can kill a cluster of cells before it becomes a fetus, or make sure you can kill them as soon as they leave the womb with the closest thing to a machine gun. So that's the goal. Yeah, pro-life until they exit the womb, and then all bets are off. It's your ass. If you can't run or fire back, do you really deserve to live? That's the opinion of the current right-wing court. The Fifth U.S. Appeals Court, based in New Orleans, struck down the bump stock ban, surprise, surprise, when it ruled in the Texas case last year. It was 13-3, found that a plain reading of the statutory language showed that weapons fitted with bump stocks could not be regulated as machine guns. Bullshit, because you only have to pull the trigger once to keep it firing. Just because the trigger mechanism is triggered by you holding the trigger. I mean, this is just like they're tiptoeing around this. They just want machine guns available on the street. This is just an activist court in a southern state where the murder rate is off the charts, deciding that they want, more people to be able to be shot en masse. And again, Biden said it very well. He's talking to this hunter dude. Like, if you can't hit what you're shooting, if it takes you 12 to 100 shots to hit what you're shooting at, you're a shit hunter. Yeah. So that's the thing. And by the way, there's not going to be a big rush of sales on these things anyways. Because quietly behind the scenes, red states will do everything they can to make these things harder to get. They will, the Ted Cruzes of the world will hand deliver these fucking things to the right-wing gun channels on YouTube, the guys that host those things, and they'll hand them over. They'll go, hey, I have one. I'm allowed to gift it to you. It's not a gun, so I can give it to you, and I didn't have to fill anything out to buy it. Fabulous. And then secretly behind the scenes, they will stop them from entering the state, and they'll gack up the mail. And if they discover one in it, they'll say, well, we had to look into why you got it and track you. So I have this backdoor way of regulating them. Yeah. Yeah, in general, that would be it. So if I can, by the way, check out the afternoon show, if you would, infotainmentwars.com. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc., etc., etc. Patreon.com/AlSparks. And, of course, there's that little Venmo over there. If you take a picture of that with your phone, you can help the show out by sending me a couple bucks or a cup of coffee a month or a week or whatever. Anything you think the show is worth, I think, ultimately. So, that said, can they be 3D printed? Yes. Yes, they can. I don't know what the ghost gun rules are, and I'm sure they're state to state, as it were. But yeah, in general, I would argue you could. I'm sure Rob, Glenn, and I in about an hour could print one up. I mean, we could design it in an hour. We could make the 3D model, and then it might print in 2 parts. It probably would, and then you might have to buy a spring or 2 to make it work. Yeah. Let's see. See if. Yeah. No. Hold on, I'll have to do this one. I lost my other one of my other things, so my other image thing, so I've got to grab it off of here. There we go. Looking for something. Dum 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 dum. Yes. Oh, maybe it's a goatee thing. Son of a bitch. Why does it always have to do that? Be with you in just one moment. Yeah, no, it's not in there. It's weird. It just disappear. Let's see. No, that's it. Maybe that's it. Nope, that won't do it either. Son of a bitch! I lost my the Jesse lens vanished. Where'd it go? Ah. Fan-fucking-tastic. It looks like I've been having so much testosterone my shoulders are getting hairy. Wow. Yeah, come on. So the reason you don't want bump stocks. Let me tell you a little story, kids. Come on. The reason the bump stock ruling happened is because you got a lot of lazy shooters out there. Guys who are like, owie, my trigger finger is getting tired. How am I supposed to defend the Tree of Liberty if I have to manually keep firing this thing? Eek, I can only take so much. So these wussies need the gun to fire for them. Bunch of AI wussies. That's what I'll tell you. Bump stock this, you weirdo. So, yeah. I like the hairy shoulders. It actually kind of works on him, when I got the hair down. Yeah. So, yeah, it kind of looks like him, but if his hair was down here, lower. Yeah. All right. I'm overtime, so I will see you guys this afternoon for the regular show. Bless you. Tomorrow, Nerd Halen at the Whiskey, and then next weekend is Denver Sexy Liberal. Get there, go do it. Meet and grope tickets, blah blah blah. And then I'm gonna be on Steph's show Wednesday next week, Thursday. I have to check. I'll be on there next week, and then Nerd Halen is also playing Denver the night after the Sexy Liberal show. So very exciting. And then the week after that, we got a Flapper show for all our Patreons, and we even have a new Patreon today. Thank you. I didn't get a chance to see who it was because the graphics is very small on my screen. I'll look at it later. But thank you so much. Patreon.com/HalSparks. You can join for the year. You can join month to month. It's up to you. And you get a free comedy show if you're a member every month, because I do a show at Flappers and we share it with you guys. Everything else, nothing about this show is behind a paywall because of our support from you guys. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. Don't make me get ads. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I don't think it's right. You know why? Because